Hey, I want to welcome you back to Beyond the Message, where we're continuing our discussion about the current sermon series, Wired. I can't believe we're several weeks into this and it's still going on. And this week we're talking about leader. And this is kind of like when we talked about prophet. It's one of my gifts, so I like talking about this gift on leader. So looking forward to this discussion today. I'm Bob Pittenger.
I'm Alan George.
So, Alan, you got the privilege of preaching this message on Sunday, and a great message. Thank you for doing that.
It was fun.
Do you love it when you get the chance to preach?
I do. And this topic is like near and dear to my heart.
Yeah. What makes it so special to you?
For me, so this has been, and I shared this on Sunday, this has been a topic I've been studying for a long time, and God honestly has been taking me on a journey and just teaching me different truths about it. And so that for me, it's one of those like, he's been teaching me a lot of things, but there are a few lessons that are near and dear to me, and leadership is one of them. So that for me, this is like really special.
Well, one of the things I love Sunday is you gave us a definition of leadership. And so let's just go back there and let's start there and let that kind of guide us as we're doing Beyond the Message today. Just share with us kind of that definition.
A lot of times, and same thing for me, when I initially thought about leadership, I thought leadership or a leader is all about, it's that, and this is like when I was a lot younger, so don't judge me by this, but my definition of a leader was, somebody who's in this conference room, that walks in, says yes, no, and then walks out, gets on a plane, goes to the next conference room, yes, no, and is just this authoritative kind of person. And really, that's not how the Bible defines leadership.
Right.
And so when we looked at the gifts, the way Paul uses that word leadership, he defines it as this. It's someone who gives attention to or presides over or manages or to care for or provide insight. So there is an aspect of giving attention, caring, that is not limited to that boardroom leader, but there's a lot of spaces where people care for each other. And we need to understand that is, in a way, leadership.
Yeah. And what I really liked about that is it as a leader, you can get into a bad habit of what you just described. Hey, I'm coming in, I'm making these decisions and then walking out. It's yes, no, do what I said and get out. Where really the best leaders are those who their people do feel cared for.
Yes.
They know that, hey, my responsibility is to lead the connections team. That's my responsibility. But my team needs to know part of that responsibility is to care for them too, to lead, develop, and care.
Yeah.
And that's being a good leader. And really, Jesus is the best leader that's out there.
Well, and part of the reason why I wanted to start with the right definition is because it's easy for people to hear this topic and, just remove themselves out of the conversation because they're like, well, I'm not a leader at work, and so I'm not a leader. Or I don't have a leadership role at the church or at work or in my career, and so this message is not for me. But that is so far from the truth. That's why I wanted to start with the right definition, because you could be a leader at work. You could be, a leader in your university or college. You could be a stay-at-home mom, or you could be working from home. And, we have a lot of people that work from home. And if you work from home and you're a contractor, for example, like, are you a leader? Or you just, what is that? Well, we all have areas where we can care for others and influence others. And I think we need to make sure we're defining it correctly.
Yeah, I know. I like that you said you could be a stay-at-home mom. Shirley and I, when our son was born, we talked about it, whether she would go back to work afterward, and she wanted to, but then she said, I really think God's telling me to stay home. And that was a decision we made. Every family has to make that decision. But she let out at home. Throughout the day, she would read books to him. She would sit down and watch Blue's Clues with him and Backyardigans and things with him. She would talk to him and do things with him. And we don't always count that as a leader, but that is a huge, being a stay-at-home parent, I don't care, mom or dad, if you're staying home and you're training your kids up in reading and praying and studying the Bible and playing games and puzzles, that is a leader, right?
Yes, absolutely. Even as a dad, for me, there were times where I would lead at work and I would kind of switch off when I get home. And that's not how God's asking us to live our lives.
Yeah.
As parents, we're called to lead our families too and our kids. And so I think we've got to we've got to stay connected and stay plugged in and not just zone out when we go home. So yeah, and you mentioned Jesus is the best model for me, and it's a reminder of how far God has brought me. But there was a season earlier as I was learning about leadership where when I had a leadership problem or I was trying to learn how to be a better leader, the first person I went to was unfortunately not Jesus.
Right.
Because in my mind, I pictured Jesus as, it was easy for me to see him as my savior.
Mm-hmm.
It was easy for me to see him as the one who loves me, or that he gives me grace, he forgives me. Like all of those, I understood. But when it came to leadership, because of my skewed definition, I looked at successful CEOs or authors,
Mm-hmm.
and that was who I tried to learn leadership from instead of Jesus.
Right.
But as you know, there is no greater leader than Jesus.
Right.
And Jesus is a really smart guy.
Yeah.
And we can learn from him. But we don't think of Jesus as our example for leadership, unfortunately, because he is the best one we can learn from.
Well, people tend to say, well, he was humble and he was meek, but he was still a leader.
I mean, look at what he did.
Yeah.
Like look at the impact that Jesus had.
Absolutely.
Imagine if someone asked you, hey, you're going to be born in this time and you're going to live in this specific area, and we want you to change the world.
Mm-hmm.
Forget specific area. Right now, where you are, if someone told you, you need to change the world in such a way where thousands of years later, they're still going to be talking about like that. That's impossible.
Yeah.
But yet look at all that Jesus did. He is the greatest leader. And I believe with all of my heart that if we want to learn how to be good leaders or great leaders, he is the one we need to go to.
Yeah. And I think the example Jesus set for being a leader is he always led from second chair.
Mm-hmm.
He didn't act like he had all the knowledge. If you read through the Gospels, a number of times he says, I only say what I hear my Father say.
Yeah.
I only do what I see my Father doing. He was so in tune with God that Jesus's leadership was really being a follower.
Yes.
I mean, he just followed.
He did. And I mean, we can go, we obviously covered a lot of points on the weekend, but the other one that stood out to me was he was a non-anxious presence.
Mm-hmm.
Sometimes we get this sense that if you're the best leaders, like you're always like stressed out and you're sitting up straight and you're kind of nervous every time he walks in the room. Like picture Jesus. He had to accomplish the greatest mission that ever was and ever is, but yet you never read about him running someplace or being late or just being distracted or not having time for people. In fact, a lot of his miracles happened when he was interrupted.
Yeah, or waiting.
Waiting.
How many days did he wait to go to Lazarus?
Yes. And so the world will tell you, man, first one in, last one out, hardest worker in the room, man.
Yeah.
I've got to organize my time so that I can be specific. And I know for me, I had manipulated my calendar so that I couldn't be interrupted because that was what I thought leadership was about. And here Jesus is open to all kinds of interruptions. And through it all, he still accomplished what the Father had sent him to accomplish. And he did it with just a sweet spirit. And the world was changed because of him. And so for me, yes, there are great examples of leadership outside the Bible, in the Bible. But I think for me, I had to go back to the source. And the model was Jesus and is Jesus. And so I think for us as a church, if we can lean there, I think we're in a good place. Let me ask you this, Bob. Obviously, it's not positional. It's a servant heart attitude, the way we're defining leadership. But specifically in the church, if someone now sees, okay, I think God's calling me to be a leader as well, where in the church can they step into this role? Or how could they be a leader in our church specifically?
Yeah, I think the gift of leader, we tend to think of the person who is the person out front, but there are so many places you can be a leader. You could be a leader in the part of the Hello Team is the parking lot. I shared one week about Chuck, who's out there. He's leading by just waving, and so knowing where you are, you can be a leader at check-in. People come up, parents are very anxious about dropping their kids off. I was just visiting with a parent who they have a 4-month-old baby, and they said, this is our first Sunday to drop them off. And I was just praying, God, please let whoever's checking them in have the wherewithal and the spiritual discernment to say, hey, let me walk with you back there. I know this is scary for you. And so that's a leader.
Yeah.
A leader is recognizing the needs of other people and
Yep.
how to lead them in their next step.
Yeah, dropping off kids does get easier as they get older because you can't wait to just you
It's
know,
like, here you go.
Here you go.
Yeah. Don't give them any sugar and you can keep them as long as you.
Yes.
Yeah, we used to say, if you don't pick your kids up on time, we're going to sell them. And people go, just I'll split it with you. Especially teenagers, right? But it's learning to be a leader. In community groups, people think of a leader as the person who's leading the group. But I love the guys in my group who they take the lead when we ask a question, and they don't make me answer every question. And they just say, oh man, I think it ought to be here. And someone say, hey, and not only that, it's this direction. And so sometimes being a leader, it's not so much you're a leader, it's you're sharing your discernment, your wisdom, your understanding, your knowledge, and you're diving into that. And you recognize this is going a direction. And I want to help. Let's go ahead and branch it out and let it go further. We were trying to go here, but we're going to go left.
Because it's not about position. It's about how do you care for someone? How do you provide insight? How do you give attention? Those are all definitions of leadership.
Yeah, I read a book years ago, The Hidden Value of a Man by Henry Cloud and John Trent. And it talked about the difference between what you were saying, corporate leaders versus servant leaders. He says at work, you lead with the silver sword and it's cutthroat. Which I don't think it should be for Christians, but that's the way it is in most of the world. He said, but when you get home, you put that silver sword on the mantle and you take down the gold sword and you lead from a servant's heart. And Shirley and I, when I read the book, we'd only been married about 6 months, and I'm reading the book, and I come home one day from work, and she's reading the books. What are you doing? She goes, I'm reading your book. I said, it's The Hidden Value of a Man. And I said, why are you reading it? She goes, there's something different about you. And it all started when you started reading this book, and I want to know what it is.
There, speaking of books, there's a very popular leadership book by Jim Collins called Good to Great. And he defines what makes companies go from good to being great. And there's this thing about level 5 leaders, which is kind of the highest point. And when you read the qualities of that level 5 leader, it's got things like humility, not being non-anxious, and just a few other traits. But I read those and I remember thinking, he's explain. This is how Jesus probably lived. It's not that, kind of rude, just mean, driven. And was Jesus driven? Yes, he was. But was Jesus patient? Yes, he was.
Absolutely.
Was Jesus clear? Yes, he was. But was he compassionate? Yes, he was. So it's not an either or. We don't have to be stuck in that binary thinking. It's understanding, how did Jesus lead, and can we model our lives like him, especially in the church? There's plenty of opportunities.
Yeah, it's finding your place in the church where you can use your gifts. I don't care to work in the preschool department. That's not me. I like leading a group, but that's how I'm gifted. So, but I need to be a leader there. But if God's called you to work in students or kids or elementary or whatever it is, hello team, whatever, he's called you to be a leader there, even if you're not the person in charge. This is what God has given me. And how do I love what you keep saying. It's not about position. It is about caring, and that's what helps a church grow the most is when I know that I'm cared for. People want to be known and they want to know. And you can only do that if you care for one another.
And if you're listening to this and you're going, well, there's really no spot or there's no opportunity for me, I can tell you, and I think, Bob, you'll agree with me, the hardest person you ever lead is yourself. And if that's where you need to start, then that's where you start. You start by leading yourself and submitting yourself to what the Word of God says and to Jesus Christ. Because I think if we start there, it's going to set you up.
Life than fulfilling what God. It's like he hasn't called either one of us to preach, but when we get a chance to do it and share out of the overflow of what we've learned, we just love it. I mean, it's just, and it doesn't matter whether it's on stage or beyond the message or in a community group or just one-on-one.
Or at home
exactly.
with the kids.
And so I'd encourage you that read through the questions below and just see where they take you in designing, figuring out your design, how God's designed you, how he's wired you and equipped you to be the leader that he wants you to be. And if you have the gift of leader, if when you took the test on Sunday as pastor is preaching, your numbers are up there, listen, get with one of the staff members at your campus and say, hey, I have this gift. What can I do with this? And let them help coach you to become the leader that God has designed you to be.